All right, guys, what's up? We are back with Behind the Bikini, and clearly we are sandwiching a new guest today. Yeah, we're here. So today we're going to be talking to Adair, and we're going to talk about our experiences as far as going pro, fast or slow, and what we felt about that now that we are beyond that and all in the pro circuit. But we're also going to talk about NPC Nationals this past weekend. And before we get into all of that, like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the buttons wherever they are on the devices. And
thanks for following along, Adair.
Like I just follow you guys.
It's okay. Follow. Yeah, this is not hard. This is not hard. It's just follow the leader here. So the first thing is let's talk about NPC Nationals, because you guys were both there this weekend. You both had clients that won pro cards. And actually, so the cool story on that too is Jordan Shawana, the pro card that your client won. You started working with her at CCTS this past year. She is one of my sponsored athletes because she won her sponsorship at CCTS, and then she won her sponsorship with you as your coach at CCTS. So that was pretty cool for like the whole year to come full circle. When you think about that, like it's less than a year ago. You guys started working together and got her to the pro card win. So that's awesome. And then Adair, your client, actually took first in that class, and Shawana took second, right?
Yeah,
Correct.
they were in the same class.
Is that so, Adair? Is that your first pro card or?
Yeah, so it was my
Okay.
first pro card, and same with Jay. So it was really cool that they were both in the same class, and then they were like 1 and 2, and then we were in the audience together, and there's like a cute
Yeah,
video of me and Jay like celebrating and stuff.
that really couldn't kind of go any better, right?
Yeah, it was really, really cool.
Well, it's funny when the
Awesome.
numbers were coming in, because with our team Fit Body Fusion, we collect all the numbers of the athletes and their height classes to know where they are on stage. And Adair and myself and Drew were sharing a room, and I looked at her and I was like, our athletes are in the same class. And they were the only ones that were in the same class. So it was really, really cool. It was a special moment for sure when both of them got moved straight to the middle, and they kind of held it down the entire time. It was awesome.
Well, that's kind of cool too, because like sometimes that sucks. Let's just be honest, because everybody wants to win, you know what I mean? But in this particular scenario with nationals, top two in every class go pro.
Correct.
So, it kind of couldn't go any better than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's hard too. Like, so I'm trying to think. Jordan, you won your class and stuff. I'm trying to think if there was anybody. Is there anybody on Fit Body right now, like coaches that won their pro card taking second?
I'm sure there are, but I don't know any off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
I was trying to think
Yeah.
off the top.
Yeah.
That's a hard position to be in, like, because I won my pro card at Universe, and it was top two in every class go pro too. So I was splitting center, so I pretty much knew, like, that was back when Universe was a 2-day show. And so I had to go from Friday to Saturday to Sunday, or to finals, till I knew that I actually won my pro card. So that whole day in between was really hard.
That's awful.
That's stressful.
Because everybody was like, "Oh, you won your pro." I'm like, "No, I didn't." Until they actually hand me my pro card, I didn't win. I mean, you think because you're split center, but at the same time, anything can happen. We know that. We've seen that happen. So it's like, don't tell me I won my pro card until I've actually heard my name being announced. You know what I mean? And it's hard, like. Because again, it could just be a matter of 1 point that puts you into third place, because we've seen that happen before too. So when you guys were sitting there in the audience watching that class, like, did you have any doubt that your two girls were going to win the pro cards, or was it close, or were they like miles ahead of everybody, or what do you think?
I was pretty confident.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like they both pretty much moved into the center right away, and then it
yeah,
was kind of both of them holding it down.
yeah. When
I think the
I
biggest
saw
question
pictures.
was who was going to get first and second. And then when we went to go get feedback, it was a pretty split panel on who they had. It could have really gone either way. But I mean, at the end of the day, they both won. They both got the pro card, and Adair and I were truly happy for each other, no matter what. I mean, Adair's girl, I think she came in second in the overall. It was very close, and
Yeah.
I guess you could call me biased or not, but I mean, I thought the girl was going to win, and so did the people behind us. So, thought Adair's girl was going to win Sydney, and they ended up giving it to I think it was Class B got it.
I think so.
But anyway, really good competition though. Pretty different bodies across the board. I kept trying to look back. Nikki and I were looking it up last night. Adair, there was one class where the two girls that won the pro card were hard as nails.
Oh, really?
Peeled peeled and hard as nails, but they looked so similar and the rest of the class was super soft. So it's, that was the best for that class. Then the rest of the classes, I feel like they got pretty spot on with, the bikini criteria and whatnot. So, when Adair was checking in Sydney in the room, I thought she was pretty on. She looked really, really, really good. And then Shawn came into the room and she looked really good. So we were both feeling pretty confident. But yeah, it was an awesome weekend. Between Fit Body Fusion, we got 5 pro cards. And the coolest thing is that there was different coaches with the 5 pro cards.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So, not all one coach or, 3 of them were Jamie's, like Jamie got one, I got one, Adair, so like, it's really cool to also see the trajectory of the team and the coaches and how we're all growing. And, something that Jamie and Greg and Fit Body Fusion really, really invested on this year was education of the coaches, and, Adair is one of the coaches that I've seen truly like rise to the top and, worked a lot on herself and her education this year. And, now she just turned her first pro, right? So it's cool to see that. And, Jamie got very emotional after the show and she was emotional because of that. She's just like, I'm so proud of the team. Like, this is not just me, like seeing, all of us succeed. And it is, it's amazing. Like the camaraderie and the team spirit we have on Fit Body Fusion right now.
Yeah. Well, that's a cool thing too. Like, I know because you guys just had pros that were created, but like I know for myself, I get more excited for them than when I do well. You know what I mean? Like, like it's cool for me, whatever, but I get more excited when I see my clients succeed, So for Jamie, that's got to be a whole new level because now she's seeing her coaches succeed too, So it's like that whole like trickle down effect. So, I mean, that's cool. It's just like anything else, like iron sharpens iron.
Absolutely. Yeah. And and the same thing goes too, which is a part of this podcast is we got 5 pro cards, but we also had 15 bikini athletes. So 10 of them didn't get it. Right. And,
still pretty good ratio though.
Oh, totally. Totally. But, of course we care about the ones that didn't, right. And how they were feeling.
Yeah.
And, Greg gave a really good speech after when we were doing the presentation of the IFBB robes. And he was like, this is where you want to be. So use this as, the example and like, keep showing up. And there was a couple of the girls that this was their first national show and they got it. And for the girls that are, this was their 3rd national show, 5th national, not whatever it was, that could be very frustrating. And so I thought, Adair and I were talking in the room after, and I was like, this would be a really great podcast, kind of talk about the different, journeys that you could have to be getting your pro card and, the mind and the concept around this, because Adair has a very different perspective of how she got it and maybe things that she would change or, do a different way than, Shawn and I did. So it was cool. It was an awesome weekend for sure.
Let's kind of pivot into that. So Adair, tell us 2 things. First, let's talk about your client that turned pro and, how long you've been working with her, how many shows she's done, all that kind of stuff, how long she's been fighting for the pro card. Then let's talk about you and how long you did, So first, let's talk a little bit about your client. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Sydney was my client this weekend that turned pro. And it's actually kind of funny because she actually has a very similar story to myself where she's only been competing like for a year. So her first show was back in May. So she did her first show, her first 2 shows with a different coach, and then she switched to me. And she was kind of debating between like wellness and bikini at that point. And, when she came to me, I was like, no, like you're bikini. So we kind of transitioned, we changed her training, her protocols to kind of fit more of the bikini criteria. And then we did 1 show together where she won the overall, that qualified her for nationals. So then we're like, okay, let's go to nationals. And nationals was like her 4th show ever. So she turned pro on her 4th show ever, first year competing, like super, super quick, right? And, very similar to my experience of turning pro quickly. But it's funny because we just had this conversation actually this morning with her where, she's like, how do they even score? Like the small little things that she just didn't even know because she rose so quickly. And, we were kind of talking about how it goes into the details and the little things and just, enjoying that whole process because it did happen so quickly for her. So, yeah, I mean, I'm super, super proud of her, obviously.
What did you guys do differently? Cool. What did you guys do differently, like from her last coach to like what you've done with her? What did you change? You said training protocol changed everything. What was different?
A lot of it was her training. So because she was kind of going back and forth between bikini and wellness, she was very quad dominant. So we had to
Okay.
change a lot of her training. And then she just also wasn't like lean enough for her first couple shows.
Mhm.
So it was bringing her in the right way and fixing a lot of like her posing, stuff like that. So making it a little bit more fluid and just in the small details to kind of actually showcase her physique properly to what she actually could be. But I would say like the main thing would have been probably her training that we changed. And,
Okay.
I'll have to go back and find the picture. I'll probably post it this week. But like just the transformation from like that first show in May that she did to nationals was crazy just to see the difference of how much her physique actually changed in between that
Mm.
from something like as small as just changing your training too.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy how quickly you can actually change shapes. You know what I mean? Like I said that with my last show, I was like just the difference in 2 months, like it's just
Yeah.
it's crazy. It really is crazy. When it's the training, but also the mobility part of it too, because you start getting like muscles to pop that didn't pop before and things like that. Like that was one thing I noticed is like a change in my shoulders and my width and stuff like that. On my left side, my shoulders never been as good as my right. But since we started doing all the prep and prime work that we do, like all of a sudden now my left shoulder pops just as good. You know what I mean? So just stuff like that, like the little, like you said, the little detail work is what makes a big difference.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I think too, it kind of goes back to the topic of today, right? Like in the pro league, those little details matter a lot.
100%.
So, like for myself too, turning pro so quickly, like I had to learn all those little details in the pro league, which wasn't the funnest thing in the world. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's
Mm-hmm.
be real, when you're in the pro league, there's a lot more pressure. There's a lot more eyes on you too. So it's like having to go through those kind of like learning curves and like the mistakes that you make along the way while you're in the league. Like it's definitely a different experience and it's not, I wouldn't say it's not enjoyable, but it's not also the most fun thing in the world. So that's why
It's in the
it's,
spotlight.
yeah, talking about
Mhm.
like how so many girls want to just get their pro card right away, right away. Like I think there's a lot of benefits in, spending a lot of time in the NPC and like really finding, your physique and your groove and what makes you a competitor and kind of ironing out all those kinks before you actually get to the pro league. Because I mean, that's not something that I got to do. And watching a lot of my clients now, it's like I'm living vicariously through them. And I'm like, I almost wish I had that, like I wish I had that time to really just mess up and have it not
Yeah.
seem as big of a deal or like the end of the world or, stuff like that.
So with you, it was your first show you went pro?
Technically. So because I'm from Canada. So the way it works in
Mhm.
Canada is you have to obviously qualify for nationals by doing a regional show. It's the same as in the States. But then in Canada at the national show, like you have to win your class and then you have to win the overall to win your pro card.
Okay.
So the way that it worked for me, I won my pro card at Canadian Nationals, and there was a regional show on the Friday night. So that was my first show, was the one on the Friday night. So I went in there, I won the overall in that show, which qualified me to compete at Nationals the very next day. So
Yeah.
then I woke up on Saturday and I got back on the same stage, but it was the national stage. And then I ended up winning my pro card like not even 24 hours later. So it
Yeah.
was technically my second show, but I mean, we didn't even peak me for the Friday night and it
Mm.
just kind of all blended together. So it was like
Yeah.
a very fast experience, that's for
That's
sure.
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you could have done it over again, I mean, like you said, you kind of wish you had more time in the NPC, but like, would you have done that back-to-back show? Like, would you have done like a regional and then gone and done a national maybe like a month later or something like that? Would you have preferred that, you think?
I mean, I would hate, like, I don't like saying that I would do it differently because I do really love my story. I think it's very
Yeah.
unique. It makes me
Mm-hmm.
who I am and like part of my journey. But I do think there would have been benefits from, having that time, even in between like that first show to the national show, because it's like the first show was very, very small. Like Canada's not as big in bodybuilding to begin with. So, it was a small show and there wasn't a lot of competitors. And then the next day I show up and I don't even know what to expect because like that
Right.
was just my first time stepping on stage, but everybody's so much better and there's more competition and better girls and it's bigger and it was just kind of very overwhelming, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And just like even small things like I had never been on a stage, like practicing my posing being confident in that, like I was shaking like so much. So even just being
Yeah.
able, I think, to have that time where I could like, look back and say, okay, like I can slow down my routine or I can do this differently or try and make like those little things just where I would feel maybe more confident on stage. I think that would have been nice to have. And then obviously I would have been able to improve more, but I
Yeah.
think that having that time would have been beneficial just to even reflect and to get to take it in too. Because like I said, it
Yeah.
happened so fast that it's all like both those shows, looking back at it now, I don't remember which is which. Like they all blur together.
Yeah, I can understand that for sure. Like, to go back to what you're saying about having the time to adjust, like I was saying that one of the things I loved, actually, I'm wearing the shirt from about the Sub and Muscle Showdown, is that I did 3 different classes. So I was able to fix my posing every time I went on stage. You know what I mean? So it was kind of cool because I could see where I made mistakes and I was able to fix that. I think for me, one of the things that's most frustrating is when I know I screwed something up and I'm like, and I want to go out there and just redo it. You know what I mean? Like, and when you don't
Mhm.
have that opportunity, like that's the whole reason I did the California show, because I wanted to have a redo. It wasn't about like winning or anything like that. I just wanted to have a redo and fix some of the mistakes I had made. So when you don't even have an opportunity to reflect on it and say, oh, this is what I could have fixed, like you probably didn't even have pictures between the 2 shows.
Yeah, no pictures at all. Like I got all my pictures all at once too. And I think also just, a lot of it is the posing too. Like especially when you're in the pro league, like that's a lot of what the judges are looking at, like the confidence on stage and your poise and how everything flows and you can really only get that. Like, yeah, you can practice posing as much as you want in your room, but it's not the same as being on stage and
Yeah.
gaining that confidence in yourself to be able to look at the judges in the eyes when you're on stage and have
Yeah.
that personality to yourself is really beneficial to have. And I think if I was able to have that going into the pro league, I would have felt a lot more confident in myself, like in the pro league.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
that's a piece. Yeah, go ahead, Jordan. Go ahead.
I wanted to touch on too, like, so when I met you, you were coming in and it was kind of your first pro season, right? With Fit Body Fusion, when you did like DC Pro Am, what was that, your first pro season?
So I had actually done well, and then it's funny because after I turned pro, I did my pro debut right away. I got third. I did my second pro show. I got second. So like I did well in those shows, but those were also Canadian shows again. So then I feel like the next year that was my first year as a pro, and I didn't do well. Like I was getting second call outs, like so that was hard to adjust too. And then when I met you, Jay, was the following year. So it technically would have been like my second year as a pro when I met you going
And your
into
feedback
DC.
at the time, so the roller coaster is, so you hit the pro league right away, you barely have time in the NPC to get the feedback to grow, so you kind of go into the pro league at a disadvantage because you're getting all
Mhm.
this feedback of where you need to kind of grow to be in the pro league, and then you have to take these off seasons after you just turned pro. And something that Adair is now dealing with or struggling with is she had a very, very great last off season and she built a little too much muscle
Too
now.
much muscle. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
A little
And
bit.
Adair is the person that goes in and it takes her 45 minutes to do prep and prime work. By the time Adair is done with
Mhm.
prep and prime work, I'm a quarter of the way through my workout. So, Adair, talk to us a little bit about that. Like, what was that like? Like, kind of, your examples that you just said of kind of, coming out into the States, hearing that feedback of needing to grow. To my understanding, you had, some challenges with learning movements at first and activation and learning how to train and, kind of talk to us a little bit about the feedback you just got at the Olympia and, kind of what you're dealing with right now as well, as you kind of continue to manage your physique.
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny because we all like want to grow muscle when we get into the sport, and like the feedbacks always seems to be like more glutes, more glutes, more shoulders, right? So that's what we're always working towards. And then, you get there, and this year my feedback was that I had too much muscle, and it's like,
Mhm.
okay, well, I never expected that to happen. So now what? And it's very, very different, especially being an athlete. Like now I'm not training. I'm not doing anything. Like I'm literally just sitting and chilling. I was allowed to start training twice a week, like a few weeks ago,
Wow.
but I'm not allowed to train to failure. So like I have to, it's basically going in and doing like peak week pump up workouts. And I mean, for me, like Jay said, like I love training. Like it is my favorite thing. I love going in there. I love pushing to my limits. Like I love training to failure. And having to adjust to that has been like really, really hard mentally for me. And I never realized, I had this conversation with somebody the other day. It's like you don't really realize how much the gym helps you mentally until
Yeah.
you can't do it. And then having this like mental battle right now of like, I want to fit the criteria and I want to listen to my feedback, but I'm an athlete at heart. And to me, being an athlete is, doing more, improving, pushing, like training. And I can't do that. So I'm having this inner battle of like, well, what am I right now? Like, where am I? How am I even improving? Because to me, like sitting on my butt and doing nothing, like, I feel like I'm wasting time, like I'm like, the season's coming, I need to make improvements for next year, but like this is technically me improving now. So
Yeah.
that's been a little bit hard mentally, but I think, we talked about this the other day, me and Jay, of just kind of finding different ways to help with the mental side of things. So we're gonna do some yoga. We're gonna do some stretching, some yoga stuff, maybe some Pilates, but it definitely is a hard switch. We're wired to be athletes at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
telling an athlete that they can't do what they're supposed to do is a weird adjustment for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
And Shawn and
it's the
I
same thing I
don't
did.
relate, right?
Well,
Because
no, I
Shawn
had
and
to
I
do the
were
same thing. I had to do the same thing with my upper body because I love training upper
with your
body.
upper body.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and I was told, once a week. Like, like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and no failure, none of that kind of stuff. It's like a full upper body, no shoulder day, no back day, no none of that kind of stuff, and I'm just like, coming from figure, I'm like, that's my jam, that's my thing.
yeah,
It's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to
yeah,
mentally shift that.
Yeah.
yeah.
And
And
I've
then when
never
you go
experienced
into the
any of that.
gym, yeah, yeah, you get to train real hard right now. I'm living vicariously through you.
Yeah. I'm like, and it's cool. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I like training legs and glutes, but not every day. You know what I mean? Like, I like having the variety. And this past year is when I went down to doing only 4 days of training a week versus 6. That's a big change, mentally.
Yeah,
Physically, I felt better because I was giving myself time to recover and all of that kind of stuff. And I was pushing harder when I was actually in the gym. So it made sense. But at first, it was a big mental adjustment going from, like I said, 1 day off a week to
yeah,
3. It's like, okay, now what?
yeah.
Totally. Totally.
And
Yeah. I
especially like
think,
in the gym too, right? When you're like, you go into the gym to train hard. And then when
That's
you're in
right.
the gym and you can't train hard and you're kind of like, well, why am I here? It
Right.
just kind of seems like a waste of time almost,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
which can also be a mental battle in itself.
Well, that's
Mm-hmm.
where I think like the two, like your story is so unique in terms of how fast you made it to the league and then how fast you kind of tapped out the muscle that they want to see
Yeah.
on you, and those are just kind of two things that very rarely happen. And what are the pros and cons to each, right? Like for me, it took me 5 national shows, and my first national show, I came in dead last with a side tricep on stage in the bikini criteria, like it's funny. And obviously I learned, but I learned from my mistakes, and if I would have turned pro right away, like I probably would have showed up to the pro league still doing a side tricep on stage, not realizing like what, I didn't even know what the Olympia was when I did my first
Yeah.
national show. You know what I mean? So like going to Sydney, your athlete that just asked this morning, how do they even judge? Like, what is the score? Like you don't learn those things along the way. So when it took me so long to get my pro card, it took me 2 years after I started, it gave me that time to actually study the sport and understand the history of our sport, understand how a promoter runs a show, how the judges score. And these are things that if you're showing up to nationals to ask to be a professional and be handed a professional pro card, to be honest, these are things you should know.
Right.
You shouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
showing up without polish, without a good tan, with your hair and makeup looking like you barely brushed your hair that morning, with a posing routine that looks thrown together. Like it does happen where girls get a pro card with these things that happen, but are they ready for the league? Absolutely not. And taking the time and having those years of showing up to a national show, having a side tricep, having a bad makeup job, whatever, it allows you to fix those things so that by the time you make it to the pro league, you're ready for the league. And I think that the earlier that someone gets a pro card like that and they don't get those little details out along the way, they really struggle their first couple of years in the league mentally because they just missed the groundwork to get there.
Yeah.
So that to me is a huge con, unless you really put forth the effort to kind of catch up. With Adair, obviously you did. But a lot of people just, they have kind of that instant or fast success, and then they expect the same level at the league, and you go from up here to down at the bottom really fast. And it's really hard mentally for athletes to adjust to that, because they're like, I did my first show, I got the overall, did my first nationals, and then they're showing up to their first pro show and they're expecting to win. And I'm sorry, happens very, very rarely, and it's very hard mentally. I've seen a lot of girls that have gotten their pro cards on the first one, and they do their first pro season and they don't come back because they can't handle that lack of success that first season. Have you guys seen stuff like that?
Well, I think a lot of it is also genetics. Like just I wanted to touch on this a little bit because we talk about with Adair, you topping out on your muscle. A lot of that is just because your proportions and your ratios. You know what I mean? Like for me, my ratios are not genetically gifted. That's why I have to get so much bigger. You know what I mean? For you, you got that teeny tiny little waistline and that big huge booty pop. It's like, okay, like it's real easy to fill that frame out too much. You know what I mean? Where you become too much of a cartoon. You know what I mean? Like they still want it to look attainable. Right.
Yeah.
So like, sucks to be you, right? Oh, I have a tiny little waist and a big old booty. Damn, sorry.
First world problems.
I know, right?
Champagne
I know.
problems.
But what people don't realize is like your genetics can get you to the pro league if you're a decent athlete. If you do the things that you're supposed to do every day, your genetics can get you there to the pro league. But once you get to the pro league, everybody's got genetics, everybody's got work ethic, everybody's got all of those things. So you have to go the extra mile with the details in order to get yourself to move up in the ranks like that. So like you said, like the shell shock kind of thing, you get up there and all of a sudden you're like, well, damn, now I'm this small fish in this big pond, where versus it was the opposite just a week ago,
Yeah.
So I think going back to also what you were saying, just having that ability to appreciate, winning the pro card and all that kind of stuff, because I think a mistake a lot of competitors make is they win their pro card and automatically go right into the pro league. So they don't even take the opportunity to be like, okay, let me enjoy this win. I just worked so hard to win this pro card. Let me enjoy this and let me be on the top of the world for a little bit before I decide to go hit the pro stage. You know what I mean? And, take the feedback and take time, but also just to appreciate the win, enjoy that for a little bit versus like you said, you didn't even get an opportunity to do that. Like as far as winning your regional and going to the pro league from there. So it's like, that's, you miss out on that part of it. Like you said, you don't even remember which show is which,
Yeah. Like I didn't even really understand what a pro card meant when I won
Right.
it. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I wasn't able to truly appreciate what I had just gotten. And, looking back at it, it's like I see all these girls that, were trying again and again and again. And, they're trying to get the pro card and oh, man, you got the pro card. And I'm like, what's a pro card? Like I don't really get it,
Yeah.
And so it's like I feel like I didn't really get to appreciate that moment, and I didn't necessarily feel as like special, I guess you could say. Whereas like, now, like I feel like my first Olympia qualification, like that was truly special to me because I was, working so hard for that over and over again. So I feel like I kind of relate that process of my journey to how a lot of girls probably feel in the NPC trying to get that pro card.
Totally.
And, I loved that journey. Like as much as it sucked getting second so much last year, like I look back on it and I'm like, but it really, really like created my character and like turned me into a better athlete, because if I wouldn't have had that season, I then would not have had the good improvement season that I had to add too much muscle. And it like, like that drove me to be better. Whereas like, I didn't really get that with the pro card. And then I wasn't really able to appreciate like, oh, wow, I'm a pro. Like this is a really big deal. So I do wish that like, that moment could have been a little bit more unique and special in that sense where I could have appreciated it a bit more, like I did with that Olympia qualification.
That's a really good point.
Quick, funny little story. So Nashville Fit Show, before you came in and checked in with Jamie, I was there and she was showing me your video of your check-in the day before. And I looked at it. I said, you don't think she's a little too big? And Jamie's like, no, she's good. I was like, okay.
Yeah. And then I walked out on stage and Jamie was like, whoa, shoulders.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I was like, oh, she's pushing it a little bit. So yeah.
Well, and it's hard to know, right? Like in the pictures and the videos
100%.
until you're up on stage next to everybody, which also goes back to like, spending that time in the NPC and having that chance to be compared to so many different people and, be like, okay, I need a little bit more shoulders, but not too much shoulders where you overshoot it, and like getting that sort of feedback too.
Well, and
Yeah,
coming from Canada, where you're saying the talent is so much different, then you come to the States and it's like, wow, these girls are huge, and it's, you don't know until you're standing next to them. And while you may look good individual or not, you really don't know until you're standing next to the other bodies up there, what you're being compared against.
I was gonna say that too. It's like probably a big culture shock just coming from Canada and then coming down here to compete and everything too. It's just the competition is just completely different,
Yeah, it's completely different, and not that the judging is necessarily different, but it is
It's
slightly
just
different,
different
right? Like
bodies. It's different
yeah,
bodies. Yeah.
there's different bodies, there's different judges up there, and that's like another thing too, right? Like when I got into the pro league, like none of the judges knew who I was. And, that's beneficial to have the judges know who you are because they give you that
Mhm.
feedback and then they see
Yep.
you show up at the next national show and execute on that feedback and they appreciate it. So it's like when I got to the pro league, like they're like, who is this girl? Like I've
Yeah.
never seen her before. Like, so I had to like make a name for myself and keep showing up like, I would have done in the NPC and kind of get them to actually know who I am, but do it in the pro league. So there was that part too that was hard as well.
Yeah. So moving on to Jordan. So talk a little bit about your because I feel like you had kind of like a very incremental move up from NPC to Pro League to Olympia. It's not like you didn't like boom get there on any one of them. You just kind of climbed your way up. Every year you climbed your way up.
Yeah. So I started competing in 2019. I started my prep about 16 weeks out from the first show. So I didn't even do any kind of like off season or anything like that. I had just built my gym. So I was into fitness, but I was not working out at the time because Drew and I spent 3 to 4 months building our gym on our own hands and knees. So when we got the gym open, I'm like, I really need to get focused again. And that's when my first coach introduced me to the sport and took me under his wing. And, we did the first show and then I got qualified for nationals and he's like, you want to go? And I'm like, sure. And then we ended up at NPC nationals when it used to be in Miami. And there was 46 girls to 50 girls in every class. Ariana Brothers was in my group and she got her pro card and won the overall at that first nationals. And like I said, I got dead last and I had a side tricep in my routine. And I look back at those photos and I was like, what the heck was I doing there? But my first coach, I was his first athlete. I knew nothing about the sport. If you would have asked me at that national show, if I won my pro card, what that meant, I would have none idea. I didn't know what the Olympia was. So anywho, I go into my first improvement season. Smaller improvement season. I think I started prep around April. And it was 2020 when the world shut down in March. So, shows kept getting pushed back. I did all the national shows that year and I just kept getting worse and worse and worse. I won the overall at Tampa Pro and my feedback was to come the exact same. And my coach put me on 2.5 hours of cardio the next day and lowered my food. So I just kept getting worse and it had a purpose. At the end of that year, I hired Jamie in October of 2020. We finished out that year with Universe and Sandy was like, she just needs an off season. She needs to pull her quads down. She needs glutes. Like her physique is so misproportioned everywhere. Like just shut her down. So we took a 16-month off season. Jamie said, and I know we've talked about this, but for newer listeners, Jamie said, I want to shut it down and I want the next time you come out, I want you to turn pro. And not only do I want you to turn pro, I want you to be competitive in the pro league. So I was like, okay. So we did the 16-month improvement season. We showed up in 2022. We were early. We did a regional show early. Didn't win the overall. We were 1 point away from that. And then Sandy was like, come to Junior USA's in 2 weeks. I was not planning on doing that. And Junior USA's is a hard show because not only do you have to win your class, but it's top 4 in the overall. So I was like, okay. So we did. I got second in the overall. I was probably about like 4 weeks out at that point. I'm not going to lie. Like I barely had a tie-in, but I had shape and it was, the best that day, according to judges. So from there, we went right to the pro league. That was always our plan, was to be competitive in the pro league. I did another 9 shows that season, and then I won my first pro show to qualify for that year's Olympia. And then from there, you know, I'm so big now with myself and my athletes on off seasons. And I truly believe you're one off season away from being a champion, from whatever that goal is that you want in bodybuilding. But I think that people underestimate what a time frame of off season looks like. You know, they think that off season is 4 to 6 months. And when I say a one off season away, that could be a year and a half. That could be 2 years, to where you come out and you're just absolutely undeniable. It depends, obviously, you know, just the sexiest answer in bodybuilding. It depends, you know, what's involved and things like that. But really taking the time to like dial in your physique. Like when we took that first 16-month improvement season, we brought my quads down a ton. We built my glutes up. We brought in my V taper. Like we shaped, we body built. You know what I mean? And that's what I've done every season. You know, every time that I get an opportunity for an off season, I look at it as an opportunity to improve. And it's really about the mindset, you know, and you guys know from, you know, what I've been talking about with this off season, like every off season I take now, I just keep getting better and better at it. I keep getting better at the food. And, you know, Adair and I talk about this a lot. Her and I are both foodies. We absolutely love food. We can get bigger in our off season because we love to eat. We love date nights. We love to socialize with food. But the more that our goals become more attainable to us, and the more that her and I continue to move up in the league, it's easier for us to stick to the goal, you know? And I think too, surrounding yourself in the community that you have is so important, you know, like Adair just moved to Arizona. I can look in her window right now. She's right across the street. Jamie's right here. You know, like we have such a good community where it's now easy, because Adair knows when I'm in prep, I can't go out to eat. And I know the same thing with her. And we're, you know, we're all doing things together and supporting each other. So yeah, I have continued to improve. I think because I'm willing to take off seasons. I'm willing to put on body fat. I'm not willing to stay stationary. I'm going to do it as long as it takes. If Sandy told me tomorrow to take 2 years off from the stage and improve, I would, because I don't like showing up the same. And I think so many people, and it's our world, it's like this instant gratification thing. Amazon has completely ruined us as a country. Like we want something and we want it in 2 hours if I order it
The
on
microwave.
Amazon. Yeah,
I would say microwave society.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's that bodybuilding is not this, you know, and it takes a very specific person to continue to improve in the sport and give themselves that patience and that grace. Like, and it means so much more when you earn it. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Like at the end of the day, and that's what Adair's saying, like that the first Olympia qualification meant more to her because she kept getting second. She got denied. She got denied. She got denied. She went into that improvement season and she said, I'm not going to get denied again. And I'm going to do everything possible. And then when she got it, it meant something. And that's how everyone feels when they get that pro card and they've been working for that pro card. I still look at my pro card hanging on the wall some mornings and go, damn, I did that. You know what I mean? And I've done 3 Olympias now. Like it means so much more when you worked for it. So if you're listening, coming off stage at nationals, whether you've done 1 nationals or 10, like just keep showing up and keep improving. Because I promise you, if you keep working toward it, anybody can do it. It's just a matter of, are you willing to put in the time and the effort to get there?
And also it's not even just the pro card too, because like for this last show that I did, my goal was to improve on the posing and the shape and all the kinds of things that I knew that I screwed up my first 2 shows this year, you know, and just knowing that I had that in my control, that I knew I could make that happen, like that means a whole lot more. And the fact that I showed up and did that, you know, meant a whole lot more than even winning. You know, for me, that was winning. That was what I wanted.
That's the win.
You know? Yeah. Right. That was the goal. And now, like I told Jamie in my check-in this past week, I was like, now I'm like, I don't want to get back on stage looking the same. I'm like, I'm gonna take the next 2 years off. She's like, I'm totally on board with that. You know? So it's like you have to sit back and say, okay, what is my goal? Because if you don't have that in sight, then you are just gonna be like a you know, your cat chasing tail, you know what I mean? Like it's just circles. So it's like saying what you were saying about like not even knowing what you're signing up for sometimes, you know, I see it a lot. And I think that's, I want to say this like carefully, but I think that's why bodybuilders don't like bikini girls a lot of times.
Yeah.
Because they're like, you don't even know what you're doing. Like we spent 10 years building our bodies just to even get on stage, let alone like try to win a pro card. There's guys that have fought for their pro card for fucking 20 years and still can't get it. You know what I
Correct.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like that's why they have a little bit of resentment towards bikini girls, you know? Like, so just understand that, like, if it weren't for them, you know, that's the first thing. If it weren't for them, we wouldn't exist. You know what I mean? So just having a little bit more respect for the sport, you know, and I think a lot of times what happens too is girls come into this sport because they were athletes in the past. So it looks like they like rose through the ranks really quickly, but in reality they've been athletes since they were babies. You know what I mean? Like, I think people forget that aspect of it. It's like, if you have just been a casual gym goer for your life, you know, that's not going to equate to the same thing as somebody who was like Ashley Kaltwasser, a D1 track athlete. You know what I mean? She's been an athlete since she was a baby, you know.
Yeah.
So she's got that muscle. I had one girl, similar situation, where she rose to the ranks really quickly. Her first bikini pro show, she won the novice and the open overall. Took a year off, came back, did a local natural show. She actually didn't even win her class at that one, so she was pissed. Went into Junior USA's the following week, a couple pounds tighter because she just had to run off her legs a little bit. Won her class, won second overall, won her pro card. First time out. And everybody was like, holy shit. But she'd been training for 3 years before she ever even stepped on stage in the first place to get to that point. And that's the part people don't see. You know, that's the part people don't see. It's like, it may look like she rose really quickly, but in reality, she's been prepping for this for years.
Yeah.
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 It's
Heather
funny, I
Esslinger,
actually,
who owns Premier, she
Mhm.
literally bodybuild for 10 years. And then
Yeah.
she
wow.
went pro her first universe with Drew.
Mhm.
And it was like, oh my God, she turned pro so fast. And I was like, no, Heather's been bodybuilding for figure for 10
Forever.
years. And she said, I'm not going to just keep wasting my time stepping on stage at nationals. I'm going to show up when I feel like I could get a pro card. And she did just
Yeah.
that. But to
Yeah.
everybody else, they don't know that. They don't see
Mhm.
that journey that she took for 10 years.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I knew
Adair,
that journey. I've known her forever, you know?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say it's actually funny because I just had this conversation with my athlete, Sydney, that turned pro this weekend because she's exactly that. Like, she was an elite track athlete in college,
Mhm.
her and her husband both. And so she's been doing this, like, she's an athlete for like 6, 7 years. And somebody had made a rude comment on one of her posts about, you know, how it came so easily, or I don't remember what the exact comment was, but her old coach actually put out a post and was like, I'm shutting this down right now because you have been working, you know, so hard for so many years and you've been an athlete. So you did earn this. Like, it may look like it came quick and it came fast, but nobody saw all the work that you've been putting in for years before this. And I always say, like, when I'm on a consult call with a client too, right? Like, the ones that always I ask about their timeline, like, do you want to step on stage right away? Like, do you want to get your pro card like in a couple months? Like, I'm always curious to see where their mind's at. And the ones that reply back and they're like, I'm not in a rush. I just, you know, I want to step on stage. I want to be good. And however long that takes, like, you know, I'm good with that. Those are the ones that I'm like, they're going to be successful because
Right.
they're not rushing the process and they're willing to put in the work behind the scenes when nobody's watching, when they're not getting cheered on and clapped and all this praise from, you know, doing so good. They're putting in the work day in and day out. And then to everybody else, it's just going to look like, oh, they just showed up and they won. But realistically, it's taken them years to get there.
Yeah. And everybody's got a different path, you know, like, that's one thing that surprises me a lot when I talk to new competitors. They feel like they can win a pro card in a year. I'm like, when I started in this, I was like, first of all, when I started, pro card wasn't even on my radar. That wasn't what I was doing. I was like, I was just doing it to see if I had liked it, you
Me
know,
too.
like, I was like, let's just see, let's just have some fun, let's see what this is, you know. And I ended up loving it, you know. And then once I started competing a little bit, I was like, okay, I'm gonna give myself a goal of trying to win a pro card within 6 years. That was my goal. Versus you see people on Instagram, road to pro. It's like, okay, you've been doing this for like 6 months. Like, you know what I mean? Like 6 months, 6 years, two different time frames, you know? So it's like having those realistic viewpoints. I don't think that until you get into the thick of it, you can understand what that is. And then also understanding that criteria changes. You know, with my story, like, this was the advent of bikini, right? So bikini started the same year I did. So I started in figure, and figure looked less muscular, less conditioned than bikini today, right? So
Yeah.
like, as the divisions evolve, your body evolves too, and sometimes you have to change course. Sometimes you have to change paths, you know? So I did a similar story to Jordan where for 1 year I did like every single national show in bikini, every one of them. And my feedback was always that either I was too big or too skinny, one or the other. There was like no in between. And it was, my structure just didn't fit. Like it was more of like the pageant girl look back then. And that I'm a big girl. Like I'm just a big girl. So, you know, my feedback was like, you're a tweener, like you're not bikini, but you're not figure. So like, you have to decide which direction you're going to go. And you know, if they were like, if you want to do bikini or figure, you can stay on the local level and do either one of them and probably win your class every time. But when you go to nationals, you're going to get crushed. So you have to decide, like you either take time off and build a figure, or you stay on the local level and compete in either one. That's basically what they told me, because my structure didn't fit bikini. So, you know, I had to make that decision of, well, I want to go pro at this point. So I need to take the time off to build for figure. Right. So, and I did that, and I came back, I did 2 local shows, and still my feedback was, you need more size. So I went off stage again, and then came out, hit my first, did a warm up, had the worst placing in NPC I had my entire career, worst placing I had. 2 weeks later, did Universal, won my pro card. That was not on my radar at all. 0. I was like, the judges actually told me, they're like, well, like, so that was the first one. So the judges told me, just come in tighter and do Universal, you'll be fine. And all that kind of stuff. So that's what I did. But I literally had 0 expectations, because I just taken 4th place at a local level show. And I'm like, bro, if I can't even win my class at a local show, like, what am I going to do when I go to nationals? Like the fucking biggest national show in the country. Like, I'm not going to do shit, you know? And it's the same judging panel. It was in Jersey. It was the same judging panel. So I knew. But what people don't take into account at that point either is height classes, right? So like local level, there was only 3 height classes in that show. So I was taller than everybody else in my class. So clearly I'm going to look thinner, you know, all those kinds of things. Go up to national level. Now there's 6 height classes. All of a sudden I'm next to girls that are my same height and my same structure and size, and I beat them all. You know what I mean? So there's things like you can't put expectations on this stuff. And again, people are like, where'd she come from? Because I hadn't competed on the national level in figure since 3 years prior. Like when I first started, I'd gone to the national level in bikini, but like my first season, I went out and I did a national shows in figure, dead last. Like, no, take that back. I did not take the dead last. I took second to last call out. So in my mind, it was dead last. But
Dead Same.
Same thing. I was actually proud of myself, because my first national show in figure, I wasn't dead last. I was in second to last call out. So I was happy. And this is back when figure was like 3-4 call outs deep. You know, it's not like that anymore. Clearly, like the shifts in the criteria and all of that kind of stuff. Figure used to be the biggest class. Clear, it's not anymore. So yeah. So again, going back to 0 expectations, and I look back on it now, and I'm glad that I had the struggle that I did to figure out where I had to go. And part of me still wishes I had stayed in the NPC a little bit longer, because I really do feel like the NPC is like where you have the most fun, you grow the most. For a lot of people, once you get to the pro league, you'll never win a show ever again, just because you're among the genetic elite. No matter how hard you work, you just can't beat somebody who works just as hard as you and was born better. You know, it just it just is what it is. So like sometimes I'm like, oh, I kind of wish I could have collected a few more trophies. You know what I mean? Like it just is what it is. So that I think everybody's gotta go into it with a realistic expectation. And again, going back to like understanding what your win is, what your why is when you're going through this too. Because at this point, like I said, this year, my goal this last show was just to fix the things I knew I could fix, that I personally had control over. I didn't have control over who I stood next to. I didn't have control over the judging panel. I didn't have control over the stage, the lighting. I didn't have control of any of that stuff. All I had control over was me. So as long as I could fix those things, then for me, that's a win, right? And you know, so a lot of people, I hate the question when you get off stage and people are like, so how'd you do? And I have to be like, I did great. Because that's just such a loaded question. You know what I mean? Like you have to figure out what is your great, you know?
That's a really good point. I'm really glad you brought that up, because, you know, I had a situation this year where one of my athletes came off stage at a national show and she didn't get first call outs, and she was absolutely devastated after she took a year off season, you know, and you have to remember that even if you take that off season and you improve, it's not always going to translate to your best placing. It just depends on who shows up that day. I mean, you have to also take into account, like, you're in off season and you're doing your best to improve, but so are your competitors, you know? So that's where I really try to encourage my athletes and anybody listening to this podcast. Like, when you're in your off season, every single day in the gym counts. Like, think about the girl you're going to be standing on stage with too. I mean, the competition just keeps getting better and better in the bodies that show up, right? So keeping that realistic expectation of yourself, and also understanding that even though you made improvements and even though you're showing up your best, it might not translate to your best placing. Nothing is guaranteed. Like, of course, as a coach, I do my best to give my athletes everything and show up our best, but there could be another athlete that's better that day. And that's a gut punch. That is an absolute gut punch. But going back to what we said originally, you could look great in front of me one-on-one, and then when we get on stage, you're like, oh, damn, we're beat today, you know? So you just have to keep focusing not on the placings. And I know that's so hard. I understand, much easier said than done, but in bodybuilding, it's the journey. This is not your show, it's going to be another one. We were talking about this over the weekend, that we know one athlete on Fit Body Fusion last year, she kept getting second at the national show, missing a pro card, second at a national, missed the pro card, and got like 3 or 4 second places. And then it was her day and she won the overall. So not only did she win a pro card, she won the overall, the whole damn show which is very hard to accomplish. Adair accomplished that. It's very hard to accomplish. So some days it's just not your day, but it will be. Just keep showing up, you know? So I love that you brought that up. You know, you always have to keep a realistic expectation of yourself, knowing that you did your absolute best, willing to take the feedback, not taking it as a personal attack. Remember, the sport is that we step on stage to get judged. So they have to tell us something to fix. They're going to tell us to get better. They're going to tell us to be tighter, and just keep that expectation and keep making those improvements and keep showing up. That at the end of the day, the judges are human. They want to see you take that feedback and improve. That's all you can do. That's the only thing you can do is in control.
Yep. And I will also say this too. I think also putting yourself into positions where you challenge yourself. Like what you're saying about the winning the overalls. I see girls do this a lot, where they go into these small little dinky ass shows with like 10 competitors and they win overalls, right? And so they expect when they go to national level that they're going to win. Doesn't work like that. Doesn't work like that. Sometimes you're better off going to a tougher competition at the local or regional level and understanding where you actually fit, so that you don't get this head of, I'm going to go to nationals and win my pro card, right? Like, because then you just I see it happen all the time. They win these little shows in Podunk, wherever, and then they get to national level and they're dead last because they didn't put themselves up against anybody that was quality, right?
That's another good point. Adair and I were looking at one specific athlete this weekend, and she made, I recognized this athlete right away, and she made the comment about her stage presentation, and it was very, she looked angry on stage, and she was actually like running into other athletes and like purposely being, and I saw her do this at her regional show. She did very good at her regional show. Obviously she got qualified. She got dead last at nationals. And it was a smaller regional show that she was at and did well. And then she actually came in pretty much the same. She needed to be much tighter, but at her regional show that day, she was the best. You know, and it's really hard conversation when we're on consult calls and they're like, oh my gosh, you know, I got first or second, I'm qualified for nationals, and I did it at the, you know, the Kentucky Open, or, you know, so this little show. And I'm like, oh, who's the judge? Don't even know who the judge is. Like, and I'm like, I'm not taking away your win, but if you do want to go to nationals, we need to get with a higher level caliber so we can actually see where you stack up. So really, really great point. Like, if you are thinking that you're going to be going to the nationals and you want to be competitive, you need to get in with a competitive group that's going to be going to that nationals with you. And that's going to be the higher level promoters, the bigger shows, the more expensive shows. Those are going to be the ones where you're really going to see the talent. I'm sorry, but like in the middle of Kentucky, in the middle of, you know, December, like nobody's going to be there that's actually going to be competitive at the national shows that you're trying to go to.
Yeah. And I think too, it's like, that's what's fun about bodybuilding, to me at least. It's like, there's so many different levels to this. Like, you know, you work your way up in the NPC, and then you go into the pro league, and then you're back at the bottom. Then you have to work your way up. And then, you know, you work your way up in the pro league, and then you get to the Olympia stage and you're back at the bottom, and you have to work your way back up. Like, that's why it's like being in a rush in this sport. Like, if you're always in a rush to get to the top, like, you're in the wrong sport, you know? Like, you have to enjoy the process and enjoy the day-to-day grind, and that's when you're going to be successful.
Yeah. Absolutely. If it was easy, it wouldn't be that fun.
Right. Exactly. Well, that's the thing. Like, I tell people all the time, like, that's what makes it worth it, man. Like, I wouldn't go through all this stuff if it was easy. Like, the fact that it's hard is why we stick to it. It's why we're so dedicated to it, you know? And I also have a pet peeve personally, just because I've worked with girls with posing and glam and suits and all that kind of stuff forever. And when they come to me like, oh, should I do this hair color? Oh, should I do this suit color? Until your physique is on point, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, like, yeah, you want to look your best. Don't get me wrong. We all want to look our best when we get on stage. Absolutely. But that's not the detail that's going to make the difference. Like the detail that's going to make the difference is your physique first. It's a physique competition. Then those little details, hair color, suit, you know, posing, then those details, they make the difference, taking you from like a second call out to a pro card win. You know what I mean? So focus on the physique first. I think a lot of people get so caught up in the glam portion of it and just looking pretty on show day that that's the last thing. That's the last thing that we do. Yes, it needs to be on point. Don't get me wrong, it needs to be on point, but your physique needs to be on point first.
Doesn't matter what color your hair is if your physique isn't on point.
That's right. That's right.
And if you
Absolutely.
have the physique and you look polished, which
yeah,
of course we all want to look polished, we'd spend a lot of time and a lot of money on this sport. Like you're saying, like that's the smallest of detail.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I'm like, I have girls do you think that hair color look good on me for stage? Yeah, but grow your glutes first.
Right.
You know, like,
save the money on the foils right now. Keep getting into the gym.
That's right. Just go eat and lift for a little while. You'll be all right. You know, like that's what you need to focus on right now. Right. So, you know, also keep those things in mind. And it's not to say that you can't like dream about those things and have vision boards and all those kinds of things. Those things are all great. You know what I mean? But make sure your physique is there first. That is the most important part, you know, and again, you don't know until you know, right? So like you were saying with you, Adair, going on stage, like you didn't realize you were too big until you got next to girls. And then you're like, oh, okay. All right, got it. Makes sense. You know, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, we see it now, you know?
Yeah. Going into my first show, I thought I was still need to grow. So it's like you can have these goggles of like what you think you need to improve on, but until you're on stage, like you don't actually know. And I think that's also, you know, going back to spending the time in the NPC, like that's the benefit of it. Like you get to show up and you get to see like, okay, where do I stand and what do I need to do to make it to that next level? That is my dream and to achieve that goal.
And I also think like taking the time, like you said, to absorb it too, because I used to have this client that I worked with for a long time with her posing and stuff. And she would do great at the local level, and then she'd go up to national level and she'd get crushed every time. And literally she would get off stage from prejudging and go register for the next national show. I'm like, you haven't even seen photos yet. Like you were in third call out. Like you don't, like, you need to just chill. Like you literally go pay for it, like between prejudging and finals. I'm like, just going to another show is not going to do it for you, right? Like take a minute to absorb, take a minute, go have a cheeseburger, whatever. Take a minute to just be in like a realistic and more, you know, objective headspace and understand, okay, this is what I actually need to fix, right? And again, getting caught up on the minutia. I get this a lot too with girls with the suits and stuff. Well, maybe I need this cut or that cut. Okay, but let's look at the physique first. Right? Like that's what's most important. Yes, we can fix those things, but let's fix the physique first. And again, coming from the objective headspace, don't make decisions about your next show until you've got some more good food in you and you've had a minute's sleep, you've showered the tan off, you know, stuff like that. Like give yourself a minute, right?
Well,
like,
and put your side by side together with the girl that won your class, you know, and like sometimes I have to cut my own head off my physique to like really assess it properly. Right. Like, and I agree with you, Shawn. I had an athlete that I was just with last night. She said that as soon as the national photos came out, she looked at her class and she wanted to see who were the top runners. And I appreciate that she's doing her homework, you know, but you know, it's sometimes too, you can almost like stop yourself, right? Like Adair thinks at this point she needs more muscle, but we see her on stage. We're like, Adair, you don't need any more muscle, but this is why we have coaches, you know? So it's, you have to be very, very objective with yourself and study your sport, right? Like in my opinion, if my athlete is getting second call out at a national show, we're not going to another national show. We're too far off. You know what I mean? Like in that first call out, there's 8 girls. So you have to think you have to leapfrog at least another 8 girls to get to the top.
Yes.
It's not your year this year. That's okay. So we're going to put the side by sides together. We're going to get the feedback. And in my opinion, you shut it down, but there's no reason to keep showing up and keep spending all this money and wasting time and also muscle in a deficit if we know we're that far off.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's very hard. Like it's easy to, and it's easier said than done to say, don't take it personally, but we do take ourselves personally. And
Yeah.
again,
Mhm.
this is a hard thing to hear is, good job, but do better. Good job, but do better. Good job, but I need more. Good job, but I need more. And we just hope so much that this off season's gonna be the one, but we just don't
Mhm.
know until we get there. And again, like that goes into like how intentful are you being with your off seasons? Like Adair was just saying a few minutes ago, like on those consult calls, you can really tap into the mindset of that athlete and how serious they're gonna take that off season. And I can tell you the ones that take their time, they're in no rush, and all they care about is making that 1% better every day, showing up to the gym. There is no timeline, there's no time restriction. They just want to put in the work. Those are the people that get there a heck of a lot faster than the ones that are like on a time clock, because they're just giving
Absolutely.
themselves that time and grace, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to touch on what you said there too with the side by sides, look at your comparisons on NPC News Online too, like your lineup, right? Because that makes a big difference. Like I know when I look at myself, like I pick myself apart, right? And so I always go back and I look at the comparisons and what I look like next to everybody else. And 9 times out of 10, when I do that, I can see the good things first. Like I can see the places where I've made improvements first. Um, I know some people are probably harder on themselves and it's flipped, but for me, that's what I do. I was like, oh, damn, I actually didn't look as bad as I thought I did, that kind of thing, So, but it really shows you clearly, like, okay, this is where I need to improve. This is where she beat me or whatever. I said this my first season with Jamie. I was like, I wanted to do New York Pro because I wanted to see myself next to the top competitors. That was my whole purpose. Like I wanted to see what I needed to do to be better, right? And I was like, okay, cool. Well, I'm in the same lineup as Laura Lee. That's fantastic. Then I can see where my shape is and where I need to improve in order to get better. Those are the things that you should be seeking out. Like I'm always a fan of, like I said, trying to get into shows where you're going to be putting yourself up against tougher competition because that's the only way you're going to get better. That's the only way.
Yeah.
If you're trying to find a show that's an easy qualification or an easy pro card win or whatever, you're really doing yourself a disservice because you're not pushing yourself to your limit at that point.
Oh, that's such a pet peeve of mine. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, why are you chasing the easy route? Like that's
Right.
never going to challenge you in a way that you improve, and eventually
Yeah.
that's going to catch up to you. I agree. Put me with the best. I want to see where I
Yeah.
need to stack up and how I'm going to improve. Put me next to
Mhm.
Laura Lee, put me next to Maureen, put
Right.
me next to all these women that are winning the Olympias, because I want to know how I need to show up. I don't want to show
That's
up next
right.
to some pro that just turned pro last week. Like I want to be up against the best so I can be the best eventually.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then when you do get there, like if you're not doing that, you're going to be disappointed. Like, and you're going to have that heartbreak and that, oh my gosh, I'm so bad and I play so horribly. But it's because you were taking the easy route to get there. You never
Mhm.
actually tried to challenge yourself or wanted to challenge yourself.
Yeah, it's a
And
waste of
eventually
time.
that comes out. Yeah, eventually that comes
Yeah.
out because you are going to have to go into a high level show at some point. If you qualify for the Olympia and there's like 3 people in your group or something when you qualify, you're gonna have to be up into that 60 girls. You have to be there. So you better put yourself up against some of them ahead of time so you know what to fix before you get there.
Yeah.
We talk about
Yeah.
this with like girls from Europe and things like that come in too hard and stuff like that. It's like, okay, you do great when you're over there, but you got to come over here so you can get a better feel for what the criteria is, and what you can do to get better, to be better at the Olympia. Because if you don't do that, you're going to be in the sea of 16. You're going to be.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So
All good stuff.
so with that, you don't have to discuss this if you guys don't want to, but if you talk to your clients about what they're going to do next, are they going to take a good off season? Are they going to come back out early next year? What's the plan?
Shawn has taken an off season. Shawana's feedback was from Sandy. She wanted more upper body. Totally agree with that. And then Bernadette literally wrote A+. So, but we know Shawana just needs a little bit of size all over. And Shawana had a lot of stress this season. It's a miracle she made it through this prep. We actually pulled out at one point and she was not okay with that. She wanted to finish what she started. Thank God she did. So she needs time to kind of, relieve some stress. She's getting ready to move and things like that. So we're just going to cruise and, build, and then we'll come out for a pro debut. She's not far off. So
Yeah.
she just needs some time just to kind of, build up a little bit and reset. And then we'll probably come out for a pro debut later on 2025.
Yeah, I was gonna say from what I saw from like videos and pictures, it just to me it looks like she just needs some more density, some more pop, that kind of
Yeah,
thing. She's got the shape, she's got the look, she's got all of that. She just needs to kind of fill it all out a little bit more.
correct. Yeah, she was a little
Yeah.
flat. We had some issues going in on Friday with feeding, a little miscommunication, so she was a little
Mhm.
flat.
Mm.
But Shawana is very genetically blessed, so the genetics carried her through Saturday, and we stuffed as much as we could, going into prejudging. So it was I was happy with the look. We could have been fuller, but just like you're saying, Shawn, she needs that density. She needs that like mature muscle. And yeah, we have a call scheduled for tomorrow to go over her new training block and things like that. So I'm excited to kind of give her some time, give her some food, and see what we
Yeah.
can really do.
Cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, Sydney's the opposite. So we're actually like her feedback from Sandy was she just needs a little bit more depth to her glutes. But other than that, like she doesn't need much more. And, Sandy said like if there was a pro show next week, like I would tell you to go jump into it. So,
Mm.
we're planning on actually like keeping her pretty tight, adding a little bit of density to the glutes. But we want to come out early this season because just like we were talking about a minute ago, like we don't know how she stacks up in the pro league. So we don't want to overshoot anything in an improvement season when we don't necessarily know how it's going to look next to the pro level physique. So
Mhm.
our game plan is to really get her out there early in the season and then find out where she lays in that pro league, and then we'll decide, okay, are we going to go into a longer improvement season? Is there a lot that we need to fix, or can we just keep going and make those minor improvements show to show?
That's actually a really good point too. This is something we could talk about as kind of like our ending point is that, you know, you don't um you don't know what you look like going from the amateurs to the pros until you step into the pro league. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times girls that win overalls at the national level suck when they get up to the pro level just because of who they stood next to at the national level. Because again, it's not about how you look, it's about how you look next to everybody else. So I had this issue with one of my clients, again, posing client, um, who won an overall at national level show, won a pro card, and then she was going to, pro level at that point, and girls that she beat in the overall were beating her at the pro level. And I was like, well, you have to understand. I said, you're in different lineups, your conditioning's not there. I said, there's things that you're missing now that they're not missing anymore. You can't just expect that because you beat them in one show at the national level, you're going to beat them when you get to the pro league. It's different. They're different bodies. You're all standing up next to each other. You're going to look different. And to be frank, you're not coming in at your best. I mean, maybe you got comfortable because you won the overall at the national level. That doesn't guarantee you anything. Doesn't guarantee you anything. You still got to come back and do better.
Yeah. 100%. And I think too, some people can get away in the amateurs with missing the basics. So things like
Yeah.
water, sodium, food selection, and gut, things like that. And then when they get to the pro league, as a pro, you should be looking at those things, right? So, and I think that they kind of miss that education in the amateurs, and they get to the pro league where the pros are all tracking these variables, and they think that they can get away with the same, oh, I can track macros, but I can, still eat this going into stage. It's like, no, you really shouldn't, because your competition is not, right? So,
That's right.
the pro league, just like Adair said earlier, it's a completely different animal. Everybody's good. Everybody's got great genetics. Like, what are you going to do to make yourself rise to the top? What is something small today that you can do that your competition is also doing to make you better? That was something I struggled with when I got to the pro league. We, as a team, we're all on macros, but I was choosing foods that fit my macros, not necessarily were best for my waistline and digestion and things like that. And I know that there was a comment out on Reddit that, I prepped on Chipotle, and that's why my waist is so
I
tight, or
saw that. Yeah.
something crazy. And
I
I'm
was
like,
laughing at that comment because I was there at that show and you were eating Chipotle, and I made a
Chipotle.
comment to made a comment to Drew. I was like, what the hell? She can see Chipotle right now.
I was still like 10 weeks out. But anyway,
I
my
know.
waistline this season is tight because I finally am just doing chicken, rice, and tracking my sodium. But,
Yeah.
before that I was eating, breads and shit foods, whatever, just like shit that fit my macros,
Yeah.
So what takes me to the next level is like dialing in on the basics,
Yeah.
so that's what it takes when you get to that level. It takes a whole new level of discipline and a whole new level of, selection on what you should be doing, especially in your off season. Like that's where it's the amateur mentality to have the fuck it mentality that we talked about last week, Shawn, of like, all right, I'm in off season, so whatever, we'll dial it back in again when we prep. And it's like the ones that are actually improving the fastest in amateurs or in the pro league are the ones that are treating it like they're a pro 24/7 in season, off season. You're in season all the time. It's just you get a little bit more food or a little bit less food, a little bit more flexibility or not. Like that's really where a very simple change in your behavior can make a huge difference in a short amount of time for you.
And understanding that too, like taking notes on stuff like that, right? Like, I know when things bother my stomach and when they don't. Like for whatever reason, I have a sensitivity to white rice. And I've realized that like when I eat it, I feel puffy, I just feel puffy. So I've realized that, and I don't do that when I'm going into the last few weeks of a show. Like I just don't do it. I'm fine when I'm not in the last couple of weeks, but when I'm in the last couple of weeks, I just eliminate it because I know I'm going to, it may not look like I am. It may not look like I am, but I feel like I am. So that's important, like I want to do what's going to make me feel my best too. So make that note, like this didn't work. So I'm gonna eat something else, whatever, like make sure that you're doing it. One of the things I was telling Jamie about this, one of the things that I found this season just by chance are these like Wassa crackers. They're little crackers. They have the same macros as rice cakes basically, but they have fiber in them. So I use those more than I do rice cakes, because they just work better with my system, and like those little things, like you don't find that out when you're in prep. You find that out when you're in off season, how you feel when you eat those things, and then you make those notes, and then you can dial it in, right?
And actually change it. There's so many people that I like do not respond well to broccoli, but they continue to eat it. No.
Oh, right.
If you get bloated on broccoli, just take it out of the diet. That is
yeah. It's not going to be end of the world. And that's the thing. It's like there's no like this has to be this food, this has to be that food. No, it's how your body processes it, and that only you know that. Like even me as your coach, I can't tell you how you feel when you eat something. You have to tell me that. You have to tell me if that makes you feel good or it makes you feel shitty. Like I said that last week when we talked about dialing in. Jamie put the yogurt in for my morning meal. She's like, I put it in there because I figure you could use it to go to the bathroom if you need to, but if you don't want to eat it, because I know you typically don't, you don't need to. And I made that call. She can't make that call. She doesn't know how it makes me feel. Right? She gave me the option, but I have to know that as an athlete. I have to know my own body.
Right.
And that's part of it too, right? Just like being in tune with your own body. And like that's part of the small details of as you're working your way up to the top, like you have to pay attention to those small things. So yeah, when you first start out, okay, whatever, you can eat Chipotle and go win your overall and you're fine. But like you need to then get in tune with your body and learn these things about yourself so that you do keep progressing and that your competition doesn't pass you by because they're doing it and you're not.
That's right. Absolutely. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to you have to take personal accountability for every step and every move that you make. That's
Bingo.
it. That's it. So
good and bad.
Good and bad. That's right. Sometimes you learn more from your failures than you do your successes. So take that as a learning experience and then just be better the next time that you get out there, So I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Did you guys have anything else that you wanted to add before we end out for today?
I don't think so. No, that was a good talk.
Okay. Awesome. Well, wonderful.
Thanks for coming on, Adair.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Guys.
I appreciate this. We need to have more guests. I've actually had a few people reach out and wanting to come on and things like that. So we need to start bringing on more guests. I think that'll be fun. It just brings a new perspective. Again, just going back to we only get better if we talk to other people and we put ourselves into those kinds of situations and learn from other people and things like that too. So it's important for us to do that too. So with that, you guys. If you have any questions for us or for Adair, you can drop them in the comments here. But make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, and hit the buttons wherever they are.
Adair, say your Instagram so the listeners can find you.
So it's just my full name at Adair LeBrock.
I'll put you
right
there. You go. Yeah, I'll put your Instagram in the description box so that people can jump in and follow you and all that fun stuff too. So, perfect. We are on episode 69. All right, I remember the number. And with that, you guys, for Behind the Bikini, we're out. Bye, guys.